Getting to know the world's greatest artists. Georgia O'Keeffe. So here's a map. She grew up in Wisconsin, moved to New York, taught, and then moved to Southwest United States in her life. Georgia O'Keeffe was born in her family's large Wisconsin farm in 1887. She would grow up to become one of America's most famous painters. Her clear, bright paintings show the beauty she found in the simple, natural things around her. Georgia loved to paint flowers, mountains, seashells, and even animal bones she found in the desert. So her paintings of zoomed in flowers and animal bones. Even though Georgia was interested in all kinds of natural things, she hardly ever painted pictures of people or animals. Georgia often rearranged the natural things she saw and simplified them. She made the seashell above very large to give it a special power and strength. Sometimes she painted shapes and colors that she saw in her mind. The farm where Georgia grew up was a great place to learn about nature. Georgia wanted to touch and feel everything she could get her hands on. Georgia remembered that when she was very little, she put dirt in her mouth to see what it tasted like. Let's read the comic. I'll point and you read. Georgia's mother thought that art was very important and made sure that Georgia and her sisters had art lessons while they were growing up. Georgia did so well with her lessons that her parents encouraged her to go to art college after she graduated from high school. Georgia studied at different art schools and colleges all over the country. At one school in New York City, she won a prize for her painting of a rabbit and a copper pot. Georgia liked New York City. It was busier and more exciting than the peaceful farm areas where she had grown up. Georgia often visited a small gallery in New York that showed the work of new artists. It was owned by a well-known photographer named Alfred Stieglitz. Alfred loved modern art and tried to get people interested in modern European artists like Paul Cézanne, Henri Matisse, and American artists like John Marin and Marsden Hartley. Georgia didn't know it at the time, but in a few years, Alfred would help get people interested in her paintings too. He says, "Remember, these are not just blobs of color and scratchy lines. These are great blobs of color and scratchy lines. I'll have to think about this for a while." After finishing school, Georgia decided to teach art for a while and traveled to Texas to take a job there. She found it an exciting place to be. Georgia loved the clear skies and the hot, bright sun. She felt the energy and power of the desert dust storms and the heat lightning she saw at night. Now this is what I call beautiful. She must be from out of town. Yup. Have you ever been to the desert? Is it pretty powerful? Georgia started to show the excitement she felt about Texas in her paintings. Soon her work looked different from the work of any other artist. During this time, Alfred Stieglitz became very interested in Georgia O'Keeffe. He remembered her from his visits to the gallery and had seen some of her newest works of art. Alfred thought Georgia could become one of the best American artists ever. He wrote her a letter and invited her to come back to New York City. Let's take a look at this painting. After she arrived in New York, Georgia began painting bold shapes and bright designs, covering her canvases with bright color. Soon her work changed and began painting the beautiful flowers that helped to make her famous. When you look at this artwork, what do you see? What does it remind you of? Can you think of some art words that you could apply? Maybe words about line, shape, or color? Georgia usually made her flowers very large. She hoped that they would make people feel the same wonderful way she felt when she looked at real flowers. Georgia thought her large flowers might even get the busy New Yorkers to stop and notice them. It's so busy there, but these paintings are very large. They're like as big as a giant sheet of paper, so they're very surprising. You can see these are the people, and that's how big they are. It's kind of cool. Georgia's paintings got attention right away. At first, people were curious to see the work of a woman artist. In the 1920s, women weren't known for being artists. It didn't take long for people to realize that Georgia O'Keeffe wasn't just a woman artist. She was a great American artist. Even though Georgia needed money to live, she felt funny about selling her work. She worked hard at her paintings and felt so close to them that she hated to see them leave the gallery. They were almost like her children. Now be a good painting, behave yourself, and don't forget to write. And remember, Mommy loves you. That's pretty funny. I don't know if she actually kissed her paintings, but... In between painting and showing her work, Georgia agreed to model for Alfred Stieglitz. Alfred thought Georgia was very beautiful and took many famous photographs of her. And she also started doing cityscapes, which were traditionally a men's painting subject. But she missed the desert, and so she moved back to New Mexico after visiting some friends. She began painting the animal bones, desert flowers, and sun-baked adobe churches she found there. Georgia especially loved the mountains in New Mexico. They seemed almost alive to her. In some paintings, you might get the feeling that Georgia's mountains could get up and move around. Here comes that artist person again. Oh no, I haven't had a chance to put on my makeup. Of course, they weren't really alive, but the ways she painted them are so vibrant. Georgia spent most of the rest of her life painting in New Mexico. Alfred agreed that it was the best place for her to be in order to make her paintings as good as possible. Georgia only traveled back to New York for a few months every year to be with Alfred and to show her work. Years later, after Alfred died, Georgia moved to New Mexico for good. Georgia O'Keeffe lived to be 98 years old, and she decided to become an artist at a time when it was proper only for women to teach art. Georgia didn't care what people thought about her or her art. She worked hard on her paintings and put her own special feeling into them. Georgia met many famous artists during her life, and she learned a lot from them, but never copied their styles or joined their groups. Because of this, Georgia O'Keeffe's paintings are very original. She often found beauty in things that most people would ignore or never even notice, and was able to show that beauty in her paintings. If you get a chance to see Georgia O'Keeffe's painting in real life, you'll probably notice how bright and clear the colors are. This is because Georgia paid special attention to her painting materials. She always bought the best brushes and paint, no matter how much they cost her. The paintings in this book come from these museums.